abuses in Guantanamo that were committed by the United States government, because they don't involve torture and they don't involve detention. And that we do have, and I think we have to keep sight of it, we do have the right to dissent in the United States. And when Medea is harassed, it just increases her energy, which is almost limitless to begin with, to dissent some more.
And here she is.
Right. Now, I do think that the people who suffer and who are at risk in the United States are immigrants who don't have permanent legal status, because when they're harassed, they're at risk of losing their homes and being exiled from their homes for what they say. And we do have a situation where we need Congress to get involved, and they haven't been involved, but we do have a very vibrant dissenting community in the United States.
It's going to take a congressional act.
To get her off, it's going to take three possibilities: a new Justice Department with a new president saying don't do this, Congress saying don't do this, or court saying don't do this. This administration is not going to take her off the list.
And with respect to this idea of the pattern, I mean, I absolutely agree that the people on the whole aren't subject to torture and detention, and I think that's a wonderful thing, and it's something we can be proud of. We are all subject to surveillance. We know that, and that's new since 9/11. That's new since some people were tortured and detained. Other people have been subject to an increasing litany of harassments. Right? Your phone calls are monitored, your emails are monitored, Medea is denied entry to the border. These are all formally separate things. I don't mean to conflate them, but we have to look at a country from its outside as a totality, and these are all things that are happening in this country, and to formally separate them and assess them individually without considering what they represent as a whole, I think is a mistake, both for people in this country trying to resist these incursions on freedoms, as well as for the rest of the world evaluating the extent to which we remain a worthy leader of the free world.
Maybe so, but you can only take on one thing at a time.
In a court.
Even in Congress.
But in public opinion, these things are all happening.
I was going to say, in Congress, I hope they can do more than one thing at a time, because they have budgets to pass, they have a lot of other things, so I'm hoping they could do more than one thing at a time.
Well, one thing that 13 Congress people did do last year was put themselves in front of the Sudanese embassy and get arrested protesting genocide in Darfur. That would make them criminals, and they then should be on this FBI criminal database. And
they may very well be. We don't know.
I have asked them to find out if they are on that database, because I would like to know. And not just them, there are many people in our community. Many of the Canadians' favorite Hollywood crowd have been arrested with us around things like environmental issues. Well, I want to know, are they on the database? And they travel back and forth to Canada, because I've talked to many of them.
We've denied entry to many people since 9/11 that have dissenting views for either for suspected terrorist activities, or I keep thinking of the gentleman that had a song, and Cat Stevens.
Cat Stevens, sure.
Who was, who was denied entry to our country.
Because his name
is a moderate, liberal Muslim thinker, I think based in Switzerland, who was invited to teach at Notre Dame University and denied entry because of his views, and that he was a prolific writer. And you know, when you talk about us having a vibrant dissent, I mean, I think we do thanks to people like Medea, but all these exercises of different chills on the First Amendment, these different acts that do inhibit people from speaking up or even entering the country.
It would have been nice if the FBI or the Canadian Embassy or somebody that we invited had been here to try to get something to some type of solution for this.
You asked whether or not it makes us safer. What I would say is that it's pretty boneheaded in the sense that you can always speak by video conference to the Canadians. The people who are kept out in Europe can always speak by video conference here.
But like the one professor that was denied entry, how is he supposed to teach a class necessarily by video? I mean, it's not going to have the same thing.
I agree with you. It's not the same thing. I'm just saying that if the goal is to prevent the communication of the ideas,
it doesn't even work.
This is sort of an inefficient way to do it.
Right.
Maybe during the 50s.
It is in a sense that I was going to Canada.
In the 50s, all you could do was send letters, I think.
We wanted to strategize about how our peace groups can work more closely together, and that's something that's a little bit hard to do over video. And when you say how do you get off the list, let's remember that the Canadian Maher Arar is still on the U.S. list after he's not only been exonerated, apologized to, and given a very large sum of money as part of that apology by the Canadian government, he still can't get himself off the list in the United States. So once you're on these lists, it's like, you know, very, very difficult to figure out how you get off of them. So that's why I feel that I want to take the privilege that I have in this society as a white woman who has friends that are good lawyers like the people here and say, you know, let's sue the government on this case because other people don't have the chance to do that.
Are you going to be suing the Canadian government or suing also with the FBI
well,
and
you'd
the
have
inclusion
to
on the list?
ask my lawyer here.
I think there's a potential case against the FBI for including her on the list.
I'd like to see what kind of case there is against the Canadians.
And perhaps in an international court.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking through some of what is going to be required to re-enter into Canada, and it looks like a very long laundry list of obtaining different records, police records, the trials or so on and so forth.
The court records.
The court records.
Your proof of residence for the last 10 years. It's 18 pages worth of documents that they said would take about 6 months to complete and get the information. I haven't even been able to get the first step, which getting my fingerprints and getting my record.
Plus 3 people, citizens in America, I guess, with good records or good standing
references, but you also have to have 5 years since you have been convicted of anything. So you can't even submit what is called this criminal rehabilitation if the 5 years has not passed yet.
So you have at least 5 years before you even
5 years before you can do it. So
and then also what happened to Anne is that they're saying that it was a crime that she even went to try to get into Canada because she had been denied previously.
Right. So they're making it pretty impossible. I think Canadians are very upset about this. They are a very tolerant society. They think that this is outrageous, and they're starting to put pressure on their government, and they're going to hold formal hearings in Canada about this. I think it's important for all of us to stand up for our rights when they get violated. And I consider it much more than harassment because it's not only my job, it's my lifelong passion has been to meet and get to know and build citizen-to-citizen ties with other people. And if I can't go to my neighbors to the north, I see my world shrinking, and I don't want that to happen.
Especially if the G8 countries start
Especially if other countries start using that, and maybe Mexico would be pressured to use that. And what happens if things get so bad in the United States
Germany,
that some
UK.
of us really have to leave this country? Where would we go? So it's a very important issue to me.
It's, what you just said is reminiscent of the Berlin Wall. Is this like an electronic Berlin Wall
That you can't leave.
There are organizations out there like Seeds of Peace that try to collapse the borders and the boundaries between societies that are in conflict, like in Israel and Palestine or like in India and Pakistan. And their model relies on citizen-to-citizen outreach, and especially in a world when we have governments that are increasingly antagonistic, it really falls to us as individuals and citizens to transcend those borders. And when we have these sort of overbroad classifications, whether it's through a database or whether it's through some other mechanism.
Well, yeah, and it's not only peace activists. I mean, there's animal rights activists. There's PETA. There's a number that actually some of these are now considered criminal, or not criminal, but terrorist on the terrorist watch list. Is environmentalist groups, you know, and animal rights protection, so on and so forth.
At the same time that the Ku Klux Klan is not on the list, which is a domestic terrorist group, or the Michigan militia is. You know, I'd be very interested to see if there were oversight mechanisms to gain access to the database to see to what extent people convicted of hate crimes in the U.S. South are on this list. If Medea is on the list, I would really hope that some of them are.
But there's no transparency.
So we can't know.
At this particular point, is that correct?
So far, I mean, across the board, there's no transparency. It's designed to be that way.
Why?
Because the executive branch wants to prove that it can do anything it wants and not be held accountable by anyone. That explains a lot of what's happened at Guantanamo. It explains a lot of other things where there really is no conceivable good reason for them to be doing what they're doing except to prove that they can do it, in my opinion. But, you know, you may have heard of that book about Cheney, The 1% Solution, where his theory